In one of my old Dungeons & Dragons campaigns I ran, one of my players came up with one of the most memorable characters out of any of my campaigns. He named him Thok the Scrumdiddlyumptious. He was a half-orc barbarian who had an intelligence of 4 and a super high strength and charisma. He was a chef, so he used a meat cleaver as his primary weapon, and also carried around a staff that had a bunch of lamps attached to it, as well as a large amount of pots and pans. Early on in the campaign, while the party was going through a kobold dungeon, they came across a mimic. Thok gave an impassioned and idiotic speech to the mimic about how they should be friends that went on for quite some time. Roll for persuasion. He ends up befriending the mimic, who turns into its amorphous form and starts to follow around the party, and sometimes does stuff to help them. They ended up naming the mimic Strange Noise because the only sound it ever made to try to communicate were strange noises that the party couldn't understand. Later in the dungeon, an NPC the party was with named Arvel betrayed them and lit Strange Noise on fire before running away. The party barely managed to save Strange Noise in time, but Arvel managed to escape. Later, when they return to town, they leave Strange Noise outside of the town, as the common folk might not take too kindly to a mimic walking around. Thok walks into the town's tavern and then just walks behind the bar, knocks out the tavern's bartender, and starts to make food and drinks for the customers. Then at the end of the day, he and the party ditch the town with all of their profits and begin to make their way to a new city. On their way, they come across another kobold dungeon and they begin to go through it. At the final boss fight, the fight is extremely close and both sides are very low on health. The boss strikes at Thok, but Strange Noise sacrifices himself to save him. Thok flies into a violent rage and completely destroys the kobold. The party finishes looting the dungeon and gets back onto the road. They arrive at the city, and due to some stupidity on the parts of the players, 2 of them get caught and arrested for murder. They demand a trial by combat and declare Thok as their champion. They go to the arena and the duel begins. The enemy gladiator is a level 5 monster, meanwhile Thok is only level 3, so I'm entirely convinced he's gonna die as this fight starts. Thok's first move is dousing the enemy in his cooking oil, then on his next turn he lights him on fire. He'd spent a ton of money to buy extremely flammable oil, so it was dealing a lot of damage to this guy. Thok was barely scraping by as he was running around the fight trying to not get hit by the gladiator as he was waiting for the fire to take him down. Then, as this was happening, one of the other party members, who was just arriving at the fight, goes through the wrong door and enters the arena. He sees someone on fire, and not realizing what was happening because he'd spent the last day partying in the tavern instead of sticking with the group, casts a spell to create water to put out the fire. He quickly leaves the arena afterward as Thok continues to fight. One of the party spellcasters in the stands has an ability that lets him silently cast spells, so he begins to try to cast spells to heal and buff Thok. This works, and in the end, Thok is victorious. The 2 criminals are released, and the party heads north to the Arctic region of the map in search of a bear, but that's a story for another day.